Hello, I would love to take a minute and tell you about my own story with fear and why I'm so excited to be offering my upcoming workshop, Fear of Falling. So, my story started when when I first started climbing. Let's be real. I was afraid from the very beginning, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to the sport actually. But let's fast forward a little bit and kind of talk about when my fear really reached its peak. So I was in my early 20s and I was going on my first big solo climbing trip. I was going to move to the Red River Gorge where I intended to work for an entire season, climb all the climbs, take huge falls, make all the friends, and have the best time of my life. I had quit my job in Boulder, Colorado. I was living in my truck and I just headed out there. So the trip was really good in a couple ways. I did make a lot of friends, but on a whole, it was pretty terrible actually because I was petrified. Every climb I got on that I had wanted to do, I would just freeze in terror. I felt every distance between bolts was insurmountable and a barrier that I just couldn't cross. I actually felt like I was going to die. After every climbing day, I would leave the crag just feeling kind of shattered and miserable and just questioning why I even wanted to be a climber. And not only were my climbing days not going as planned, but a lot of other behaviors started cropping up too. Like, all I wanted to do was spend days at the Whole Foods in Lexington and the bookstore. I did not want to go climbing anymore. My psoriasis was off the charts. I got back to back sick. My immune system was compromised. And most importantly, I didn't look forward to going climbing. I was actually really anxious before all climbing days. So I kind of reached a breaking point and just tail between legs, head down, ran away from the Red River Gorge. I ended up moving in with my mother for a few weeks, I don't know, and then to Vegas, and I dove completely into a different sport, breakdancing, and I quit climbing for over a year. And the reason I quit climbing for over a year was because I felt there was no way I was going to ever overcome my fear to actually enjoy climbing and feel like I was performing in a way that I wanted to be and as a climber I wanted to be. So, yeah, okay. Fast track. I was living in Vegas. I was breakdancing a lot and I actually started dancing before I left for that trip, so I kind of had it in mind as something I wanted to be doing. But I want to talk about what I learned about fear through dancing. So, I was not brave in these classes. It was really, really hard for me to show up into these classes and move my body in unorganized, unlearned ways in front of people. But I kept going, and the instructors, the other dancers, were always so supportive. And after every class, and I would have about 2 to 3 classes a week, they would form a circle, and everybody had to take a turn going in and dancing in the circle. And you can either freestyle, come up with what you wanted, or you can do moves you had already practiced, but the only thing you had to do was go into the circle. Even if you walked in and walked out, that was still a win. So at first it was terrifying, but what I learned was that through consistency and support, that eventually I looked forward to my turn. And there were clear levels of progression, which was super duper helpful for me because it started out with just, okay, go in and do 1 or 2 things, and then go in and do more, and then go in and create something, and then let's not have turns. Let's just go in when you feel like going in. And it was amazing because I still could. And over time, just kind of ramped things up to where I was performing in front of people once and feeling comfortable competing in dance competitions and kind of jumping into these cypher circles, that's what they're called, with some of the best dancers in the world. And let me be very, very clear about this. I was not a good dancer, but I loved it and I felt brave, I felt confident, and I felt like I finally found something where I was able to overcome my fear. And the steps I used through that are steps I now use with all of my clients to help them overcome their fear, as well as just what I've learned through so many years of climbing and just kind of sticking with it. So after that year, I started climbing again, and I started with a clean slate, and all the tools and lessons I learned about growing my confidence and learning how to be relaxed through dance, I brought to climbing. And I'm gonna just go ahead and give you a list, and I'm gonna read it off of my thing so I don't forget, but a list of some of those big points. So important takeaway number 1, I learned to overcome my fear in a supportive, kind, and consistent environment. Consistency is key with anything to do with fear. Important takeaway number 2, I started working on overcoming my fear in really low stress situations and would only up the stressors and the stress when I was feeling confident and relaxed and wanting to progress to that next step, that next scarier thing. Okay, important takeaway number 3 was I learned how amazing it feels to be relaxed and confident in my sports, and to really take ownership of knowing that that was priority for me, that anytime I started to feel scared, overwhelmed, and like there was a wall again, that was no longer acceptable. And it was even at very low levels. Now I recognize fear and I really try hard to do something about it. Okay, so that was my brief story, and I'm still a rock climber. I can now take huge falls, to me huge falls, and some of them are pretty big, but they're only on climbs that I know the moves. I've practiced the falls from a really low level, and this is really important, when I'm ready to be taking those falls, then I know I'll take them. And sometimes I still get really scared on easier climbs, on new projects that I have in mind. But instead of feeling like this wall that I can't overcome, I now trust in a process. And I'm really looking forward to teaching you that process. And it really is going to come from my perspective as well as my perspective as a coach, where we're going to do skills and drills and practices that I incorporated through dance and in my climbing, and using tools, talking about the mindset piece, the physical piece, the skill piece, all of that, as well as going into belaying, because the belayer is a very important side of the equation in you feeling safe while climbing. So we're going to be talking about how to communicate with your belayer to express your needs, how to practice certain things with your belayer, such as soft catches. As a belayer, some ideas around how to give soft catches. Yeah, it'll be a great time, and I hope to see you there. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon.